Hey everyone, Rob Vino of Rob Vino Sports here. Thursday, August the 18th. Once again, going to go over your Major League Baseball card. We're about 3 hours away from first pitch for the night game slate of Major League Baseball this evening. Going to take a look at those games. A couple of day games going on right now before we get to the nighttime stuff. The Cubs with a 5-3 lead in the bottom of the fourth over the Milwaukee Brewers. Again, remember yesterday we talked about Milwaukee being a potential fade. Lose again yesterday on the run line. We were going to fade to the run line. And today, down by 2, although they did come up with 3 in the fourth. Zach Davies on the hill. Pitcher I mentioned yesterday that perhaps we'd like to shy away from playing against. The Cubs are so red hot right now. And the Ryan Braun injury, as we discussed yesterday, takes a little bit of steam out of the Milwaukee lineup. On the American League side of the ledger today, Boston and Detroit have now hit the top of the 8th inning in a 1-1 tie. Detroit, certainly with their banged-up lineup, looking to get a big win here. The Boston Red Sox off of a rain-shortened 8-1 victory. A 2-game sweep of the Baltimore Orioles where they really dominated. The big news for Detroit, though, and the big news going forward is that Miguel Cabrera is back in the lineup today, back starting. So manager Brad Ausmus, very accurate with his assessment as soon as the injury occurred, that he'd be surprised if Cabrera missed more than 2 or 3 games. He missed a pair. Today he is 1 for 2 with a single. So Miguel Cabrera once again back in the lineup for the Detroit Tigers, which makes it more formidable. Today's lineup was Ian Kinsler at the top. Eric Ibar, acquired from the Atlanta Braves, hitting second, playing shortstop. Cabrera, the 2 Martinez, Victor, and J.D. in the 4 and 5 hole. Casey McGehee, 6th, Saltalamacchia, 7th, Romine and Presley hitting 8th and 9th. But once again, big news, Miguel Cabrera back in the lineup for the Detroit Tigers. But let's get to some news and notes here for tonight. Potential money makers. Yesterday, the free play came through for us with the St. Louis Cardinals. A lot of good stuff in yesterday's report. Today's report, let's start with the bullpen concerns. I always like to look at bullpens. Been analyzing bullpens since the late 90s, about 1998 into the 2000s. Always, at that point in time, it seemed as if bullpens were becoming very important at the back end. Sure enough, we note now that they are very important, and they can help you in your handicapping each and every night. So let's take a look. I found one bullpen of major concern this evening, and it's the Seattle Mariners. They're going to go up against the LA Angels tonight. But Seattle's bullpen really fatigued here. Newly acquired Archimedes Caminero, you remember him, the flamethrower from the Pittsburgh Pirates, came across to the Mariners here this summer. And he's thrown 3 of the last 4 days. They've really worked him hard. 58 pitches over the course of the last 4 days, so I wouldn't expect to see Caminero. Edwin Diaz threw 27 yesterday. Vidal Nuno, who's been very good out of the bullpen for the Mariners from the left side, has thrown back-to-back days. Tom Wilhelmsen, a veteran of that pen in Seattle, 26 pitches yesterday. Could come back today. But it is 2 and 3 days and 44 pitches in those 3 days. Wonder how effective he could be. Really, the lone standing arms that you have that you can guarantee are not fatigued at this point would be Drew Storen, who threw 14 pitches yesterday, ready to come back, and Nick Vincent, a pair of righties, but neither one dominant whatsoever. So the Angels could have the back third door wide open for them in tonight's contest. And if you pair that with how horrendous the Angel bullpen has become, injuries and trades, one thing on top of the other for this team, really decimated their bullpen. Perhaps innings 7, 8, and 9 can produce some runs here this evening in a game where Iwakuma and Shoemaker are the starters. For both bullpens, that's real good news because those guys are capable of getting deep into the game. But if you want to take a shot that one of them doesn't make it beyond 6 innings tonight, you could play that game up and over the total for the game. Probably not a first 5-inning play, but certainly a game play there considering the bullpen status late. You'd be looking at going up and over 8 runs, pretty much a flat number, 10-cent vig. So that could be one to look for from a bullpen perspective. Neither one, in my estimation at least, dependable for this evening. Let's go through here and look at some stuff, starting with some first 5 inning numbers. We went over them yesterday with Zach Godley of Arizona. Cherry picked that one. It wound up being a winner as Godley and the D-backs did get the first 5 inning money against the New York Mets. Here today, there's a couple to look at. One, I think, is a little more definitive than the other because you can play both sides of the fence in one of these games, but still, I think, worth noting, and we're going to start there. National League, Miami at Cincinnati. Cincinnati has won 2 of the past 3 games. It is the return to the rotation of Jose Fernandez tonight for the Miami Marlins. His turn was skipped in the rotation as the Marlins try to reduce his innings. Got about a 180 innings pitched cap on him for the season. So we may see his turn skipped in the rotation once, maybe twice more down this last 6 weeks of the Major League Baseball season. Fernandez tonight going to pitch against Dan Straley. How about this? Dan Straley of the Cincinnati Reds, in his last 7 games, the first 5 inning total has gone under in 6 of those 7. He's 6-0 with a push under the total. First 5 inning line in his last 7 starts. Straley been very good throwing the ball for the Reds this season. All 7 of those games, the first 5 inning line was lined between 4 and 5 runs. Now tonight's game sits at 3.5 as we speak, which is the lowest, or lower than all 7 of those totals. Certainly that's based upon Jose Fernandez being on the other side of the field here tonight, and the mound opponent for Dan Straley. 3.5. Can you get a 2-1 ball game, 1-0, 2-0, somewhere in there, and stay under the 3.5 runs? Maybe you could with both of these guys, but it's a little bit dicey when you consider the 9 days off for Fernandez. Don't know exactly how sharp he's going to be when he takes the mound tonight. You would think the rest did him well. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt in that situation, going up against a Cincinnati lineup that he should be able to handle. But Jose Fernandez, here are some numbers for you. Before his last 4 starts, last 4 trips to the hill, Jose Fernandez had gone 8-0. 8-0, 8 straight games where his first 5 inning total stayed under tonight's total of 3.5. Extremely low-scoring games thrown by Jose Fernandez. 8 straight. However, he hit a 4-game stretch before this skip of his turn in the rotation, where the first 5 inning results produced 8, 5, 3, and 6 runs. So certainly 3 of those would have gone over tonight's total. Only 1 would have stayed under. We'll see if Jose Fernandez can regain form. If you believe that he comes out rested and ready to roll with the 9 days off, under 3.5 could be a very strong consideration for the first 5 innings in the Cincinnati-Miami game. But if we move to the Houston-Baltimore game tonight and continue talking about first 5 inning numbers, you have Musgrove for Houston, who has pitched very well in his first 2 starts against Kevin Gausman for the Baltimore Orioles, who has been pretty good over the last, let's say 7-8 starts for the Baltimore Orioles. But I want to take a look at Joe Musgrove and Gausman from a first 5 inning perspective. For Kevin Gausman, he's allowed 1 run or less in the first 5 innings of 8 of his last 11 starts. So in 8 of his last 11, Kevin Gausman over the first 5 innings has allowed 1 run or less. Houston's offense hasn't been tearing the ball up as of late. So certainly that could be a consideration. Just to back that up, we have the numbers here. The Houston Astros, 13 out of their last 18 games played, they've scored 2 runs or less in the first 5 innings. Bodes very well for Kevin Gausman. The very small sample that we have to work with from Musgrove. But you know what? The 2 starts he's made in the major leagues have come against what you could argue to be the 2 most dynamic offenses on the AL side, Toronto and Texas. And this kid's been phenomenal through those first 2, both 7-inning stints. 6 hits allowed to Toronto, only 5 to the Texas Rangers. 2 runs allowed in the 7 innings to Toronto, 1 to Texas. So Musgrove versus Gausman tonight. When you take a look at that game from a 5-inning perspective, perhaps you fall in line with that one a little more than you do with the Cincinnati-Miami game, just out of sheer room for error. The Baltimore-Houston game, first 5 innings, is lined at 4.5 rather than 3.5. You have Musgrove and Gausman to stay under 4.5. You can get a 2-2 game after 5, cash a ticket. But those are 2 to look at tonight from a 5-inning perspective. Give them a look. We'll see how it goes. See if those trends continue with those 4 pitchers, those 4 teams. All right, so we've gone over the bullpen. Biggest concern of the night, Seattle, the first 5 inning stuff. Let me get into this LA Dodger offense, which, again, we talked yesterday about how dominant they've been against right-handed pitching for quite some time since the All-Star break. Now, last night, no exception, as the Dodgers roll to a 7-2 victory over the Philadelphia Phillies. In that contest, the Dodgers, once again, really pulled the bats out, and they did some serious damage with the long ball. Adrian Gonzalez, 5 RBIs on 2 home runs. Justin Turner, a 2-run homer as well. That was those hits, those 3 hits, 3 home runs were responsible for all 7 runs last night. But a quick look at the numbers from last night will show you that, once again, Los Angeles, a .289 batting average against the right-handed starter and the ensuing right-handed relief. 372 on base percentage last night was their game total. A 925 OPS for that game. It's interesting, they're playing opponent here in the Philadelphia Phillies that only has 1 left-hander out of the pen. Once the rookie left the game yesterday for Philadelphia, they just continued to run right-handed pitchers out there. Jake Thompson left the contest, his 2nd or 3rd start in the major leagues. The big righty obviously knocked out of the box by the LA Dodgers, and then the ensuing parade of right-handers that came out, which led to Adrian Gonzalez's 7th inning home run. Philly just can't throw left-handers out there to protect against, like I say, the very powerful and very left-handed dominated lineup for the LA Dodgers. Once again, when the 2 righties in that mix are Justin Turner and Howie Kendrick, as hot as they are, it shows you how explosive LA can be. Philadelphia turns around tonight with Jared Eichhoff, another righty, throwing against the Dodgers, and the right-handed bullpen arms will probably continue to come out. So I don't see any reason why LA doesn't score again tonight. Ross Stripling, the starter for LA, has been very good over the course of his last few starts. In 20 2/3 innings, he's had a 0.92 whip. So we'll see if Stripling can complete the sweep for Los Angeles, who now stands a game and a half ahead of the San Francisco Giants after their blown 4-0 lead yesterday afternoon, against the Pittsburgh Pirates. So look for LA. Certainly LA has been good against left-handed pitching, and I think that you could really look to them over the course of the last 6 weeks of the season where left-hand pitching is concerned. Want to go ahead and skip now to the Washington and Atlanta game. You have a quick turnaround pitching rematch here in the contest between these 2 pitchers. The Washington starter, Lopez, pitched very, very well. Ronaldo Lopez in that contest through 7 innings against Atlanta picked up the win. His opponent in that game, Whalen, did not pitch as well. Washington got the victory. Once again, like I say, this is a quick turnaround pitching rematch. Both of these guys, youngsters, new to the major leagues. But that game on the 13th of August, just 5 days ago, I think really points out a difference between pitchers and the lineups that they are opposing here. Washington got Bryce Harper back into the mix yesterday with a long home run. Their bullpen is in far better shape tonight, the Washington Nationals bullpen, than the Atlanta Braves. The Atlanta Braves bullpen right now is a complete and utter mess. Talked about Seattle earlier, but boy, the Braves are just, reshuffled. Not once, not twice, but about 5 times so far this season. If you look to what they have this evening, Ian Kroll, Eric O'Flaherty, and Chaz Rowe have all thrown on back-to-back days. They just don't have capable depth in that bullpen. I think Washington can benefit late. But once again, your quick turnaround matchup in this contest between Ronaldo Lopez and Robert Whalen seems to favor the Washington Nationals here. I know the Matt Kemp acquisition has, sparked the Atlanta offense a little bit. Ender Inciarte has been better at the top of the lineup. Of course, Markakis and Freeman have been good, but after seeing that game last week where Lopez went 7, only allowed 5 hits and 1 earned run to these Braves, I think Washington's got a pretty good shot here. They come off that 12-10 slugfest loss against Colorado yesterday. So look for Washington to come into this series looking for victories. Once again, I think there's an advantage here starting pitching-wise. I think there's an advantage bullpen-wise, both for the Nationals. And talk a little bit here about the Arizona Diamondbacks and the San Diego Padres contest. A lot's been made of the Minnesota Twins' propensity to get up and over the total. And it's true, they have gone up and over the total quite a bit. Excessively, maybe more than any other team in the major leagues over the course of the last month and a half. But Arizona's right with them. The Arizona Diamondbacks are 16-4-1, up and over the total in their last 21 games. 14 of those 21 games played by the Arizona Diamondbacks have resulted in double-digit run totals for the game. So as far as runs scored per game, Arizona has really been up there. Their offense has been good all season long. Their pitching, starting and relief, has been abysmal. There's a couple of good starts in there. I should say the starting pitching has probably been below average. The bullpen has been abysmal. But certainly they produce runs in their games. Now, the opposite end of that spectrum is the San Diego Padres, who in 6 of their last 7 have scored 2 runs or less. I think we knew when the Matt Kemp trade was made, when the youth movement was in full bore as their lineup turned to a lot of young players, they have stuck with that. San Diego scored a lot of runs once Kemp left. In the immediate departure of Kemp, they scored a lot of runs, but boy, they have cooled off lately. You could see this coming. Just can't expect that lineup to score the way they were scoring, and this is probably far more indicative of how San Diego will score for the remainder of the season. So a little bit of a contradictory number there with Arizona getting up and over the total so often recently, and the Padres being so weak offensively. In tonight's contest, you find the total in the Arizona-San Diego game to be 8.5 in Petco. Generally a high number. We have seen some games in Petco, probably more than in recent memories, produce runs. But this is an interesting one. Archie Bradley against Pat Clemens. Arizona's been very good against left-handed pitching to boot. So we'll see. Maybe a case can be made here for the over this evening, simply based on the fact that Archie Bradley is probably good for 6 innings. And then you get to the Arizona bullpen. And also, Archie Bradley just not in very good form right now. His last 25 in the third innings have resulted in a 6.39 ERA, 1.82 whip. So I think that you might be able to squeeze out an over the total play here. But you do have to be a little bit leery because the Padres are just so inept from an offensive standpoint recently. The pitching on the other side could help them change that around here tonight. I wouldn't put it past the Padres to put up a 4-spot, 5-spot maybe against Arizona here this evening. What I want to talk about next is Carlos Rodon and the Chicago White Sox. against the Cleveland Indians here this evening. And here, as I speak about it, let me just put this out there as the free play for this evening, this underdog play with the Chicago White Sox against Cleveland. A lot of reasons here to like the White Sox. Probably the biggest concern with Chicago tonight would be their bullpen, which is a below-average bullpen, and certainly a bit fatigued here this evening. Not desperate by any means, but certainly not ready to go with their best arms, the few that they have. So there might be a little bit of a concern with the bullpen here for the Chicago White Sox. But if you look at this game, Carlos Rodon starting to really turn it on the last couple of starts. Something he did last year. He closed the season extremely strong, and Carlos Rodon's last 2 starts for the Chicago White Sox, I think, serve as an indicator that he's going to be a play-on pitcher the rest of the way out. Just to go ahead and throw out some numbers for you, his last couple of starts for the White Sox here, and Rodon's had some problems throughout the season, but it looks like things are corrected and he's in a bit of a groove. He went 6 innings at home against the Baltimore Orioles, only allowed 5 hits, 2 runs. One of those was earned. His 7 strikeouts to 2 walks, 3.5 to 1. Very good for Carlos Rodon. It's the one thing you have to watch for with him is how high his walk rate is. He's certainly a guy that's had trouble with the base on balls throughout his major league career. He followed up the Baltimore game with his start 6 days ago at Miami against the Marlins. 6 innings, 3 hits, only 1 earned run allowed again. So his last 2 starts have combined for 12 innings pitched, only 8 hits and 5 walks, so 13 base runners in those 12 innings. Very good whip there. And he's also allowed only 2 earned runs while striking out 11 and not allowing a home run. He had allowed 6 home runs in the 3 games prior, but again, it was an abrupt turnaround for Rodon last year when he became a play-on pitcher in the second half. As somebody who likes to be ahead of the curve, I think Rodon is worth a playtime. Very big underdog price against Danny Salazar. Let's dig into him a little bit. This will be his first start in 16 days. Obviously, he's come off the 15-day DL. August 1st was his last start, and he then was placed on a 15-day DL with inflammation in his right throwing elbow. Never a good sign. I don't know that I like to be on pitchers that come off the DL from an elbow problem in their first start. I think that could help the White Sox here. Yesterday's come from behind victory in the 9th inning by the White Sox, I think, says a lot about the tenacity of this team at this point in time. They're still fighting. Adam Eaton hit the grand slam down 7-6 in the 9th inning yesterday. So I think you've got fight in the White Sox. I think you've got a starting pitcher for Chicago in Rodon, coming from the left-hand side, that can be effective here tonight against the Indian lineup. And certainly he's a guy I have the arrow up on right now. I think for the remainder of the season, I'll be looking very closely at playing Carlos Rodon in his starts. Certainly on a situational basis, not a mechanical knee-jerk reaction basis, but a situational basis. Like him here tonight because of the price tag. I mean, you can't go wrong in this contest tonight where Carlos Rodon is such a heavy underdog. You can pick up in excess of plus 170. I think the low is about 164, 165, but it's a big price to me against a pitcher who's coming off the DL from an elbow inflammation problem. I like the White Sox tonight as our free play for the day. Give that one a look. I think you can cash in on that. Otherwise, across the card, I think one last thing I'm going to mention here before we sign off for today is the Kansas City Royals Minnesota Twins game. Dylan G, not a very effective pitcher for this team, but Kansas City's red hot right now. Back to 500, 60-60. Talked about it a little bit yesterday. They wind up sweeping the Detroit Tigers. It's a team with nothing but fight inside of that dugout. They're not going to quit. They firmly believe that they can latch on to one of those wild card spots late, and Minnesota coming in with Duffy starting tonight and his 7.54 ERA over the course of his last 5 starts. You can see KC, whose offense, talked about it yesterday, once again, something we talked about that proved true, really picking up at this point in time. So against a pitcher, a right arm, a fringe arm like Duffy's, I could see Kansas City scoring some runs here tonight. Minnesota certainly has had hot bats as well. Talked about their current run. Not even current, because it's going on for a while, about a month and a half of playing games up and over the total. It has a lot to do with their offense being more effective. Even though Miguel Sano has gone down to injury, they continue to hit the ball pretty well. They rested Joe Mauer yesterday. He'll be back in the lineup today. Duffy versus G looks to be a rather high-scoring affair, but Kansas City playing so well right now. Keep an eye on them. Another underdog victory for them last night. They're certainly not going to be underdog in any of these games against Minnesota. But if you see an opportunity in the starting pitching matchup over the weekend, during the course of this 4-game set, perhaps you can get a little creative with KC on the run line. So there you go. That'll wrap up our Major League Baseball report for today. Once again, free play Chicago White Sox plus the heavy price behind Carlos Rodon over the Cleveland Indians. We'll be back tomorrow. Don't miss out on preseason football tonight. Obviously, a lot of games on the schedule. We'll have a lot to talk about there. This is Rob Vino of Rob Vino Sports saying good luck with all your plays this evening.